So my name is Myron Ashley. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. Our corporate office is in Independence, Missouri. So Strategos. Who is Strategos? Strategos is formed 22 years ago by Von Baker and Mark Warren. And they have trained over 400,000 people, law enforcement and civilian, all over the world, over 17 countries. In 2007, and that number is going to come up quite a bit, in 2007 a significant event happened which changed the way that they looked at training. Since then, they've trained over 75,000 church personnel representing over 1,800 ministries. What guides us in how we plan to prepare and protect churches, schools, corporations, manufacturing companies? So Matthew 10:16 is our guiding principle. What is it? Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So who are the wolves? Who are the wolves? The bad guys. And the sheep, they would be our parishioners, our families, people like that. That makes us either the shepherds, or if you want to be a sheepdog, you can be a sheepdog. So that's our guiding principles. The second half of this, therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. That is how we plan. That tells us how to plan and prepare for the incidents. So we want to do that in a sense that doesn't, shall I say, it doesn't jeopardize the core mission of our churches. So what is the core mission of a church? Well, we look at it as a place for safety, refuge, comfort, sanctuary, learning. So we don't want to compromise that. We always want to enhance that. We look back at history and vision. And again, we want to go by and look at some definitions. So let's define a professional first responder. Professional first responders are going to be our law enforcement, medical, the EMS side of it. The true first responders is going to be who? It's going to be the people who are there when the incident happens, the true first responders. So the success or failure of how the incident turns out is going to be based on either the appropriate or inappropriate response of the people who are on the scene when the incident happens. So let's look at some stats. So if we look at the stats from 1999 to the latest stats from the government go up to 2017. So we've had an increase of church violence of over 2,500%. That is going to continue to increase. We hear that every night on the news, and then there's some piece of literature that says that's going to continue, and that's called the Bible. So the Bible says this is going to continue. Good news is we know how that's going to end. So let's break that down a little bit. We have robbery, domestic violence spillover. So that's a significant issue within both schools, churches, workplace violence. So we had Southern Springs Baptist Church. So that was an example of that. You have a spouse leaves another. The remaining spouse blames the in-laws, wants to have retaliation for that, goes to the local church, church of 50. Significant portion of those people were either killed or injured, and a community of 400. Half of these incidents happen in communities of less than 10,000. Example of domestic spillover violence. Confirmed mental illness. We look at let's think about the Nashville shooting down there. That was based on mental illness. And we see this idolatry going on. Lakewood Baptist Church, that was, on the stock of that gun was Free Palestine. So we see idolatry going behind this. When we look at the numbers, we always hear about churches and schools in the news. And so actually it's businesses that have the largest percentage of workplace violence. But you're going, okay, what is the chances of me actually being hurt? Well, it's 184,000 to 1 that you're going to be killed from workplace violence. We look at the others, odds of dying, falls, car crashes, cancer, heart disease. Well, this is a small risk. Why should we prepare? Well, we have frequency versus impact. So if the frequency is low, okay, that's good. But if it happens at any of our places of worship or schools, the impact is high. And I just have to say by one word, I can say one word and you'll say, okay, Columbine, significant impact. Sandy Hook, significant impact. Uvalde, Texas, significant impact. So the impact to the community is very high. So that's why we need to prepare for the events. Time. Time is our friend and it's our enemy. So what's the value of time? Success or failure is most likely going to depend on you, the people at the scene, not on the professional first responders. So going back to 2007, what significant event happened in 2007 at an educational campus? Virginia Tech. So Virginia Tech, that's when we started thinking differently about this. Virginia Tech set the record two ways. It set the record for the quickest law enforcement response time. There was 2 SWAT teams on site within 2 minutes. Anybody in law enforcement says that that is a miracle, and that doesn't happen. It usually takes 45 minutes to an hour to wind up a SWAT team. The other record that was set at that time was the largest loss of life in a school shooting event. So 2 records the same day. Quickest law enforcement reaction time, 2 SWAT teams knocking on your door within 2 minutes, but we had the largest loss of life. So what I need your help right now. We're going to play this video, and I need a timekeeper. Anybody get out a phone and could start a stopwatch on that? Do I have a volunteer to do that? The rest of you, what I need is you're going to hear gunshots. We're not going to see anything. We're going to hear gunshots. I need you to count those gunshots. There's going to be a lot of wind noise. This is from a cell phone video, and there's crackling that goes on in the background. Just count the gunshots. So I'm going to start it, and we're going to count the gunshots. And when I say go, you start the timer. And when I say stop, we'll stop the timer.
Listen to how the shooting played out on campus.
That's background noise. Go. Stop. There we go.
Whoa.
Okay, how many gunshots? 26? That's hard to tell with all the background noise. There's actually 27 shots, 26 by the shooter. The last one was from law enforcement. They were using a shotgun to breach the locks to get back in. The shooter had chained the doors shut. So law enforcement was the last one. So we had, what's our time? Okay, 49:17. It was actually 52 seconds, so that's my fault for stop and go. So 52 seconds. Do I have any math majors in the room? Do I have anybody that took math? Shot every 2 seconds. There you go. So we see the value of time. And under a minute, we lost a lot of lives. That's every 2 seconds a shot was fired. So do you understand the time value here of the true first responders? Next thing I want to talk about, because it's very important, it's called normalcy bias. Normalcy bias, let's read it. Mental state of denial individuals enter when facing a disaster or pending danger. Normalcy bias leads people to underestimate, minimize, rationalize the crisis away. It leads people to believe that since something has never happened, it isn't happening. So they're going through that process. Virginia Tech had part of that going on. Right next to that building was a construction project. They had the air nailers going on. These people were being conditioned that, nah, that can't be shots. But when you think about the rhythm of air nailers versus the rhythm of shooting, boom, 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 versus air nailing shingles on and putting a construction project together. But that was normalcy bias. They didn't believe it was going to happen, so they kept rationalizing away. Here's another example of that. Down in Wedwidge Baptist Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We had a male staff member, and he observed a shooter come through, shoot two young individuals, and then came into the foyer. At that point, he says, "Oh, ladies, stand aside. This is part of the skit." He was then shot twice. He looks down, sees his own blood, and says, "Oh, stand back. They're using paintballs." The shooter then goes on into the sanctuary and starts victimizing other people. It was reported that young kids were running up saying, "Hey, shoot me," thinking that they wanted to be part of the skit. He didn't realize that it was real, even though he had been shot twice. So that's an example of it. And I already talked about at Virginia Tech. So let's talk about training versus non-training. Whenever an incident happens, we all have startle and fear. Every one of us does, whether you're trained or non-trained. And the untrained side of it, you go through the normalcy bias. Disbelief, denial, panic. You fall into helplessness, hopelessness. On the trained side, you've already accepted that it can happen because we've talked about normalcy bias. You're aware of it. You know it can happen. The mind has been there. We always say that the body can't go where the mind has never been. So we accept it. You go through it. I'm aware. I'm going to recall my training, urgent response, and then I'm going to commitment to action. We often hear that we shouldn't train our people because it will scare them. Man, if we train our staff, we hear it in schools, grade schools and specifically. Oh, if we train our teachers, they're going to get scared and they're going to have a high level of anxiety. They don't understand where fear comes from. Fear comes from having a problem without a solution. So think about swimming. If I don't know how to swim, I'm afraid of the water. Once I learn how to swim, that fear and anxiety goes down. So I have a solution to my problem. We see it a lot with our elementary school teachers, that as we train them, at the beginning of the day, they're really anxious. At the end of the day, when we're done, they're going, I feel like I've got something to work with now. They were feeling hopeless before, versus now they're feeling hopeful. All right, I want you to watch this video, and you tell me if this is trained or untrained response. So this was a shooting inside the terminal, the baggage area, at the Fort Lauderdale Airport.
The attack came without warning, as seen on this airport surveillance video obtained by TMZ. 26-year-old Esteban Santiago pulls out his pistol and opens fire. Passengers run for cover as Santiago moves out of camera range through the baggage claim section, where police say he emptied his...
Trained or untrained response? Untrained response. I'm going to watch that again. I want to walk you through it just to see it. So you see Santiago, he is at the lower portion of the screen, pulls out his gun, he starts shooting here. There's a gentleman standing right behind him, an elderly gentleman standing there. He's going, huh? You see an elderly lady, she starts recognizing, she goes through a few seconds of that. She goes over and hides behind a luggage cart. So you see that? And so we're having an untrained response there.
The attack came without warning, as seen on this airport surveillance video obtained by TMZ. 26-year-old Esteban Santiago pulls out his pistol and opens fire. Passengers run for cover as Santiago moves out of camera range through the baggage claim section, where police say he emptied his 9...
You see it there? Trained versus untrained response. All right, so let's look at the attacker's motivations and goals. We see this consistently throughout schools and churches. They want to set the new record, and they set the new record by a higher body count. They already know that they've got 2 to 5 minutes before law enforcement shows up, and they don't plan an exit strategy. They plan on either taking their lives or have law enforcement do it for them. They have a hatred of everybody, but they don't blame themselves. They blame everybody else. Does anybody know anybody like that? Okay, I saw some people pointing to each other, so sorry about that. And so they blame everybody else. And they're not responsible for their own personal problems or failures. They see the world in two views. They see it as being a victim or victimizer. They look at it as failure or success. That's how they view the world. So on the victim side, they've been a victim all their lives, and I'm not going to be a victim anymore. The day that they have made the decision, number one, to take their own lives, there's no reasoning left after that. If I have today and I say, hey, I want to take my life today, there's no consequences after this. I know what I'm going to do, so I can do anything. They have made that decision. I am going to move from a victim role. I am going to now be a success. I am the victimizer, and I have that control. I have that control. We heard it at Columbine, where in the library, Miss Patty was the substitute teacher that day. She was yelling at the kids, untrained response. She only went back to her training that she had, which was natural disaster training. Kids, get under the desks. Get down to the floor. That's her commands. They were untrained commands. And Patty did a great job that day. But I'm just telling you what happened. The shooter went around the library that day, and he was going up to young students and saying, young lady was praying. He goes, is your God going to save your life today? No. And he went through and took the lives of a lot of children that day in the library. And so that untrained response, being a victim versus victimizer, they are being successful that day. So that's a little bit of the background of the shooters. All right, what do we do about all this? So there are training models out there, some called run, hide, fight. They are called linear models. Linear models means I do this, sort of like a math problem. I do this, then I do this, then I do this. I run, hide, fight. We tested that. We tested that with 1,500 people. And we had them go through a training exercise. And guess what 50% of them did? When they heard shots, what did they do? Well, first of all, they ran. Where did they run? Half of them ran towards the shots. Well, even trained law enforcement personnel can't tell where shots are coming from in a building. Sound is ricocheting everywhere. So life is not linear. Moral to the story. Life is not linear. So we look at a situation where you need to look at two things. The true first responders and location, and where are you, the true first responder, in location or reference to the threat. So if I'm close to you, that's different than if I'm by that door. What action do I take? So we have a 3-out assessment. Our 3 outs. Okay, lock out, get out, and take out. Not in any particular order. You base that decision based on where you are in location to the threat and where you're at. So let's look at this room, for example. If I've got a lockout, I need to lock out the area. Maybe there's an intruder outside. I hear shots. So if I have a shooter that's outside and I can lock down this room, then I'm going to lock out. If I can't lock down this room, then, and he's coming through the door, or what's your name? All right, I talked to Jeremy this morning a little bit, and he seems like a really nice individual. What if Jeremy was really tired of me talking? And he gets up and says, Myron, I've had enough of you. What are you folks going to do? So these folks, there's an exit right over there. They're going to get out. Over here, we have an exit, so they can get out. People in the middle have a choice to make. What's your name? What's his name? Devon. You need to decide if you're joining Devon and piling up on him. Lock out, get out, or take out. Well, I couldn't lock this area out. Get out, take out. Based on where you are relative to the threat. Does that make sense with everybody? So it's a nonlinear model. Whether I'm here, at the grocery store, movie theater, at my home, my church, it's the same model. Doesn't matter. If I can lock out in a room, I know it's secure, I lock it out. I lock, layer, reinforce. I might need to get out of an area to a room that I can then lock out. If I don't have any choice, we're going hands-on. Devon's all over him. He's going down. Okay, what do we do for our clients? For our church clients in particular, we have 13 programs that involve training. They can be firearm training. They can be planning training for leadership staff. A good way to approach this, a lot of our churches do this, whether you're small or large, it's a very affordable way. You can host a training event, and you can do a 1-day or a 2-day training event. Friday, we do the security planning for leadership, so that's where our trainer will come in, and they sit down with leadership and go, okay, what is your planning? They'll go through planning models with you. Then on that Saturday, that's when a lot of volunteers can come in. A lot of people have more time on Saturdays. That's when we actually go through the intruder awareness response for church personnel. So that is done where we have a host church, and they sell tickets to it. And so what we do is then we develop a flyer. We want a champion at the church to help us because they need to contact their local churches. We help with the marketing, but that's a good way that we can get training out to people in a very affordable manner. Any questions? It's usually about 8 to 4 with a lunch included. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, and I love Dallas.